Hello friends. This video on life processes part 29 is brought to you by examfear.com. No more fear from exam. So it is now time to discuss about the internal transport in plants. Because we have already spoken about the transportation in animals. So let us now discuss that how the transportation takes place in plants, because in plants also they perform processes like photosynthesis and prepare their food which is stored in the leaves. So there has to be some way by which this food gets transported to different parts of the plant. Right? So not only the food but also the water which is generally extracted from the soil. So the water which is obtained from the soil is reachable directly by the roots. But all other parts of the plants like leaves, flowers, fruits, everybody needs that water. So how is that water transported to the different parts of the plant? That is all we will talk about in internal transport in plants. So what are the most important needs of the plant? Water and food. Water which is obtained from the soil through root hairs, and food which is prepared by the leaves by process of photosynthesis and stored in the leaves. So who takes care of this transportation? The vascular bundles, that is xylem and phloem tissues, facilitate transportation in plants. I have already introduced xylem and phloem as vascular bundles in the lesson on tissues in class 9. So if you want to have a brief introduction on them, you can refer the videos of class 9. So now here we are going to see how the xylem and phloem actually help in transporting water and food to different parts of the plant. Now when we compare a plant with an animal, the energy needs of a plant are quite lesser than the energy needs of an animal. That's because plants are immobile, so they need lesser energy than animals. So even if the transport system is little slower, that is okay for plants. But it should be able to reach over large distances as there are some plants which are very tall. Like for example, in human beings, what happens is they need too much of energy. Human beings need energy because they are running, jumping, moving from one place to another, they are thinking. So there are so many activities going on inside the body of a human being. So their energy needs are more. So the transportation process has to be very fast. Right? Because at no time it should happen that some part of the body is lacking oxygen or it is lacking some nutrients. Right? So the transportation has to be very fast in animals. But in case of plants, since they are immobile, so the energy needs are lesser. So even if the transport system is little slower, that is fine for them. But it should be taken care that the transport system should be such that it can reach over large distances, because the size of the plants varies. It starts from very small grasses and herbs, but it extends to very big trees as well, which have got very good height. So the transport system should be good enough to reach that tall height. Correct? So let us now see how the vascular bundles facilitate the transportation in plants. So what are the functions of xylem and phloem? So the function of xylem is to transport water and minerals absorbed by roots from soil. So whatever water and mineral is absorbed from the soil, it will transport it to other parts of the plant. The phenomenon of upward movement of water and minerals from root to aerial parts is known as ascent of sap. Ascent means rise. Now in this case, what is happening? The water which is obtained from the soil has to rise upward. So this movement of water and minerals is known as ascent of sap. So xylem actually helps in the ascent of sap. What about phloem? What does phloem do? It transports the food from leaves to other part of the plant, because the food is prepared in the leaves by photosynthesis. So from leaves it has to be transported to all other parts. So what is this process called? The phenomenon of transport of food from leaves to other plant parts is known as translocation. So xylem helps in ascent of sap and phloem helps in translocation. So let us have a look at these two processes in detail. So let us first talk about ascent of sap. Now what are xylem? Xylem are mostly dead cells. Now there are many elements which together constitute the xylem. So what are the different components of xylem? Tracheids and vessels, So what are they? These are tubular structure which conduct water and minerals vertically. So here you can see this is how a trachid looks like. It is a tubular structure which has some pore-like structure called pits all over it. And these are vessels which are again tube-like structure with pits all over it. And how are they connected? I mean, how do they conduct water or minerals? Now, the trachids and vessels, they both are used for conduction in case of flowering plants. In case of flowering plants, both trachids and vessels are used for conduction. But in case of non-flowering plants, vessels are not used for conduction. Only trachids are used in case of non-flowering plants. And both trachids and vessels are used for flowering plants. Right? Now, how do the trachids conduct? The trachids conduct water or minerals through the pits. So through the pits, one trachid conducted to the other trachid, and that is how it gets conducted. Now, how do the vessels conduct? The vessels are placed end to end without cross walls. Let us suppose these are the tube-like structures or vessels. Now, two vessels are placed end to end without any cross walls. So what will happen? Water can move through them. So they will together form a pipe-like structure, and through that water and minerals get conducted vertically. Right? So trachids and vessels are the components or the elements of xylem which actually help in conduction. However, there are some other components also like xylem parenchyma. Xylem parenchyma's main purpose is to store food. So here you can see how the parenchyma cells look like. It consists of cytoplasm, it consists of a nucleus, but their main function is storage of food. They also have xylem fibers. The xylem fibers are the dead cells which are used only for structural strength or support. So out of these components of xylem, the only components which help in the conduction of water and minerals or which helps in the phenomenon of ascent of sap is the trachids and vessels. So now the question is how ascent of sap occurs. So now we understood that what carries or what actually helps in carrying the water and minerals. It is the xylem, and that too in xylem it is the trachids and vessels. But the thing is, physically, how does it happen that water starts moving upward against the gravitational pull of the earth? Why does the water move upward? Like something which is falling towards the surface of the earth, that is because of gravity. But how can water against the force of gravity go up? So this happens by the two processes of diffusion and osmosis. Now soil is the place which is enriched with water and minerals. So we have all the water and minerals in the soil. So from soil it goes into the root hairs. How it enters the root hair from soil? By the process of diffusion and osmosis. What is diffusion? It is movement of particles from region of higher concentration towards lower concentration. So the movement of minerals from the soil to the root hairs happens through diffusion. So the minerals actually diffuse. And what happens to the water? What is osmosis? Movement of water from a region of low solute concentration to higher concentration. What is solute? Let us suppose if we have a solution, that is a liquid in which we have some solid particles. So this solid particle is called solute and the liquid is known as solvent. So the liquid is known as solvent. So water will move from the region of low solute concentration. That means low solute is less, means solvent is more. So water will also move from region where more water is there to a region where the content of water is less, right? So basically osmosis is a term which is used for movement of water. So the movement of water from soil to root hairs is governed by the process of osmosis, and the movement of minerals from soil to the root hairs is governed by the process of diffusion. Now once it reaches the root hairs, how it reaches above? From root hairs it gets into the xylem vessels of the roots. Even inside the roots we have the xylem vessels. So we have the trachids and the vessels. So it will enter into the xylem vessels. So from the xylem vessels of roots it will enter into the xylem of stem. And from there it will enter into the xylem of leaf. That is into the leaf veins. So how will it go to the leaf? It will go through the vessels and the trachids. So we see that xylem actually helps in the upward movement of water and minerals to the aerial parts of the plants. So this is how ascent of sap occurs. Now let us look at what are the forces which favors this phenomenon of ascent of sap. So let us look at the forces which favor this phenomenon of ascent of sap. Now the question is, the water which is taken from the soil and then transported to the entire of the plants, where does that water go? How is that water utilized? It is seen that about 1 to 2% of that water is utilized in the process of photosynthesis. Because we know that in photosynthesis, water is one of the needs of the plant, because carbon dioxide combined with water to form glucose in presence of sunlight. But only 1 to 2% of this water is utilized in photosynthesis. What happens to the remaining water? A large part is lost in transpiration from leaves. So actually what happens is, when this water from the soil reaches the aerial parts of the plants, most of the water is actually lost into the atmosphere from the leaves, and this process is known as transpiration. It is the loss of water in the form of water vapor from the aerial parts of the plant. So that means on the leaves we have the tiny pores called stomata through which the gaseous exchange take place. Through the same pores, it is also possible that water may be lost to the atmosphere in the form of water vapor, and you can see that how much amount of water is getting lost in the form of water vapor by transpiration. Now what happens as a result of transpiration? Now because of the evaporation of water molecules from the cells, there is a force which is created. So since there is lack of water in the leaves now, so the leaves will have a tendency to pull the water from downwards. So this force is known as the suction force. So the evaporation of water molecules from the cells of a leaf, that is transpiration, creates a suction force which pulls water from the xylem cells of the roots. So this suction force actually favors the ascent of sap. That means this also enables the water to move in the upward direction against the force of gravity. So we can say that ascent of sap is largely governed by the physical processes like diffusion, osmosis, transpiration. So all these processes together favors this phenomenon of ascent of sap. Thank you. Please visit www.examfear.com to watch more videos, attempt free online test, get free study material, find tutors and mentors. Thank you once again.